guys, what is up? Big Red Reviews here, back again with another video. If you remember about 3 years ago, if you're one of my OGs, because you know I have so many subscribers, I did a Star Wars timeline, and I think it was right before Kenobi came out, which I think was like 2022. So I wanted to update it because we got a lot of shows since then. We got Kenobi, we got Andor, we got Boba Fett, we got Ahsoka, and we got some of these stuff that aren't even out yet that I wanted to talk about. This is all coming from this fat-ass encyclopedia book I got, and also Google. We're not going to be talking about comics, or I'll mention the video games, but I don't really want to mention the comics and stuff because there's so many damn comics that are canon. And if you don't know, like, Star Wars canon is just basically this, right? It was like this, and once Disney bought it, it went down, and Disney, like, cut a lot of stuff from canon, and they're picking and choosing what comes back into the canon. So we're not going to talk about the comics and stuff. We're mainly going to focus on the movies. And because if you don't know, in any type of media, Star Wars, Marvel, the movies are #1 canon, like tier 1. You could have books and stuff, and those can, so example, the Ahsoka movie kind of retcons something that happened in the book. There was an Ahsoka book that was considered canon for a few years with her like lightsaber colors, and basically the Ahsoka show overtook that. And so like any live action media is considered tier 1 canon, and that can out canon other stuff. Holy shit, we are nerds. Let's get right into it. I wanted to start off with not a movie, I know, after that spiel about movies, which is the High Republic, which is 500 BBY to 100 BBY. Now quickly, for you non-Star Wars nerds, people who are watching just to support me, first off, I appreciate you. Second off, BBY stands for Before the Battle of Yavin. The easy way to remember this is the Battle of Yavin is episode 4, A New Hope. So basically the first Star Wars movie ever is like the middle, like the ground point, and then you go after. So you have before Battle of Yavin, and then you have after Battle of Yavin. Kind of like, you know, BC before Christ, or BCE before Common Era, then AD, which is after death, stuff like that. The High Republic era, I just wanted to put this in here because this is basically stuff we're still learning about through the Acolyte. This is like the golden age of the Jedi, right? Sith haven't been seen for thousands of years. Jedi have been thriving and all this, and they don't really have a lot of conflict. Like I said, there is books in this era. This is like Yoda in his prime as well. I just wanted to put this in here because this whole story is just not the prime of the Jedi. The Jedi are always like, you know, the downfall, like the Order 66 and all that. So I just wanted to mention this because then this leads into the Acolyte, which is 100 BBY, which I don't think a lot of people have seen the Acolyte. I had my problems with it. I don't think it was as terrible as a lot of people were saying, but I do understand why people don't like it. I don't agree with the people who don't like it because the lead actress is black, or if there's a gay character in there. I don't agree with that at all. I think that's stupid to hate a show because of that. We'll get to, because that's a lot of the reason why some people hated the sequels, which my gripes with the sequels are different. I'll explain that. Yeah, the Acolyte basically takes place 100 years before the Battle of Yavin. It takes place about 68, 70 years before episode 1, and this is basically like when the Sith first started to emerge. And what sucks is I don't know if we'll even get an ending to this show because I think they canceled it, which I hate. Like, okay, if you Disney has this tendency where if someone hates something, instead of like continuing with the story but like fixing the stuff, they just completely scrap shit. We can see this with the sequels where we went from episode 8 to episode 9. It just doesn't really work in my opinion. So the Acolyte had this great setup, right? Like, yeah, some of the episodes were kind of mid getting to that setup, but now that we have this great setup, and we're never really gonna have a payoff, which I hope we do. We basically see the Jedi encounter this like anti-Jedi. They're not really using the word Sith until the end. And we find out that the main girl in it is basically has a twin, and we find out that they were made by the Force. Like I said, we don't have all the answers because they never finish it, but from what we know is there was this cult of people on this planet, and they basically willed them into existence using the Force, which is something very interesting because there's only one person to be made from the Force, which is Anakin Skywalker, which made him the chosen one. So we don't really know if there was like some lying in that story, or if there's manipulation, or what's going on, or if that's real. We'll never find out, I guess. But then the main big thing that happens in the Acolyte is at the end, we see Plagueis. If you don't know who Plagueis is, he's mentioned in episode 3, you know, have you ever heard the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise? This was Palpatine's master, and this is who Palpatine kills because Plagueis was trying to, you know, figure out how to cheat death and all that, and obviously that was Palpatine's goal as well. He's a cave dweller, so that's it. That's all we knew. And we don't know if the main bad guy, I think his name was Kier or something like that, Kamir or something like that. We don't know if he was a direct follower of Plagueis, if he was Plagueis' first, you know, pupil or whatever. We don't know because, again, we don't have a season 2. But basically, this leads into episode 1, which is where, you know, we have Senator Amidala, who's, you know, lead of Naboo. Basically, you know, a lot of people shit on the prequels, and it is politic heavy, but I just really love how it fleshes out the world. Like, we get these heavy... Episode 1 is a really political... I mean, every Star Wars movie is political, but, like, Episode 1 is really like a political thriller almost, because you have Palpatine's plan coming into motion, right? You've had these 60 years of Palpatine where he kills Plagueis, and he's trying to make his own plan, and the prequels are really seeing his plan come to fruition and seeing how patient Palpatine is. We see basically like the trade... I'm not even going to pretend like I know exactly what's going on. I know the Trade Federation wants to like invade Naboo or something, and if you don't know, obviously like the robots and stuff are Palpatine, and when we get to episode 2, the clones are Palpatine. So this whole Clone Wars is just Palpatine playing both sides, which is like such a good plan. We see Qui-Gon Jinn, which is one of the best Jedi ever. I love how he's not like, you know, just like a regular Jedi, like he does question them, because as you see even in the Acolyte, and you will see in the prequels, Jedi's downfall is their hubris. They don't want to believe that, like, there's a Sith. They don't want to believe that they're not the best, you know, they don't want to believe that their ways aren't the way. And that brings their downfall, and Luke does mention this in episode 8, which I loved. We'll get to that, obviously. Yeah, we see Qui-Gon, he has a pupil named Obi-Wan, obviously, and then they have to make a pit stop at Tatooine because something was broken on their ship. They meet Anakin Skywalker, who obviously, you know, is Darth Vader. And a lot of people shit on this. I mean, hold on, wait. Padme is like 16 in this movie, and then Anakin's like 9, and they're like flirting.
There's something you need to know.
Please.
I'm Chris Hansen.
No, you're not.
Yes, I am.
No, you're not.
Yes, I am.
And we see Anakin off rip. We see what Anakin loves in this movie, right? He hates. He hates obviously slavery. Him and his family have been slaves. Most people on Tatooine are. You know, he says bye to his mother, and from what we end up finding out, this is the last time he sees his mom. He promises his mom that he would save her, and he doesn't. And we see like this is the whole catalyst to his connections, right? And this is, you know, as a Jedi, you're not supposed to have connections, and we see that be challenged with Anakin and even Obi-Wan in the Clone Wars, where, you know, he has Satine and he has this romantic relationship with her and he loves her, and he even mentions that he would leave the whole Jedi Order for her, right? And we see this challenged a lot. And basically we have one of, if not the best fight in Star Wars. I don't think it's the best. But obviously when it comes to importance, I'm not even going to act like this is my own words. This is from Dave Filoni, who obviously we don't know. He's like the new head of Star Wars. He made the Clone Wars. He made Ahsoka, all that stuff. He made The Mandalorian with Jon Favreau. This duel dictates everything that happens in the story, right? If Qui-Gon wins, Anakin wouldn't go under Obi-Wan's wing, who wasn't ready, and he wouldn't have been manipulated by Palpatine because Qui-Gon would have clocked that shit, right? So Qui-Gon losing here sets and catalysts everything that happens in the Star Wars universe, and it's literally the duel of the fates. It's the duel of this child, Anakin, like which side is going to end up winning in the end, right? And even though Obi-Wan wins it, you know, I mean, that in turn means Palpatine wins it. That's such an important battle, and it's one of the best. I mean, it's one of the most iconic Star Wars. You know, the score with the double-bladed lightsaber for the first time. I mean, it is iconic. Let me skip ahead 10 years to episode 2. We don't really know what much goes on in between here. There's like a book that takes place during it, but, you know, just basically Anakin becoming, you know, a knight or whatever. Episode 2 is Attack of the Clones. Probably like one of my least favorite ones. It's not bad, but, you know, it's just the writing between Padme and Anakin could have been a bit better. I think that's its biggest downfall, right? Is like the whole love connection. There are some really good scenes in it. It's just George Lucas isn't too great at writing like love dialogue, so... Quick editor's note, I am in no way saying I am a better filmmaker or writer, but this is just my opinion when it comes to the romantic talk in this movie. So that kind of ruins it a little bit. But we basically see Anakin come back, and, you know, Obi-Wan can even tell he's already excited to see Padme again. He's obsessed with Padme. And we see probably the most convoluted assassination attempt maybe in cinema history.
So Palpatine needs Padme dead, but he doesn't want to do it himself. So he asks Count Dooku to go kill Padme. But Count Dooku doesn't want to do it himself. So Count Dooku asks Jango Fett to go kill Padme. But Jango Fett doesn't want to do it himself. So he asks his shapeshifter friend to go kill Padme. But the shapeshifter sends a robot to go kill Padme. And if you really want to be an asshole and get even more granular, the droid says, I'll send these little bugs to go kill Padme. Palpatine sends a man who sends a man who sends a shapeshifter who sends a robot who sends bugs to go kill Padme. And what's even funnier is that after they chase the robot and the shapeshifter, Jango has a chance to go kill Padme. But instead, he goes out of his way to assassinate the person he hired to assassinate Padme.
So then basically there's an assassination attempt, so Obi-Wan in the Order is like, okay, Anakin, you are in charge of taking Padme away, and obviously that sparks their connection again, and Obi-Wan is really, you know, he knows what's going on. Like, he never admits it, but Obi-Wan deep down knows about it. I think he says in the Clone Wars, like, I know you and Padme have a connection. I just choose to look the other way because it makes you happy, right? So then this sets up their relationship. Anakin basically has a vision of his mother dying. He goes to Tatooine, finds out his mother did die, and he kills all the Tusken Raiders. And this is where we first get that really darkness, this really big darkness moment of Anakin, right? Like, we didn't really have that in episode 1, obviously, because he's a kid. But we really start seeing, and a lot of people say Hayden Christensen's a bad actor. Obviously, I think it's dialogue. But we really see Anakin with his inner turmoil of having to be a Jedi, but, you know, he sees all this unjust happening in the galaxy, and he just hates it, and he can't stand it. I, for one, agree with Anakin. Obviously, when we get to the Book of Boba Fett, we see the Tusken Raiders. We know they're not totally evil, but they killed my mom. I'm fucking slaughtering the whole village. I don't care. I think most people would agree with me. If not, sorry. Then we get the Battle of Geonosis, the first Battle of Geonosis, and we see all the Jedi. This was, I remember seeing this as when I was like 12, and all the Jedi were coming together, and they were fighting, and we see Jango Fett get fucking beheaded by Mace Windu, and we see Boba Fett pick up his head. I mean, this is some dark shit. I mean, like the kid picking up his dead dad's helmet with his head, right? I mean, it's crazy. And we basically see the start of the Clone Wars. We see the clones, which the clones do get fleshed out more in the Clone Wars show, thankfully. And we see the clones fighting, you know, the robots, whatever the fuck they're called. And basically, it's just so insane seeing Palpatine, and you know deep down Palpatine's playing both sides, and everyone is oblivious to it, right? Also, I'm gonna forget a lot of stuff in these movies. I am sorry. I'm mainly just kind of like cliff notesing them. I have watched them recently, but I can't remember everything. I mean, there's so many glup shittos I can remember. There's so many fucking weird ass names I can remember, and all these like factions. You know, it's not gonna be like an actual deep dive into the fucking timeline. It's just gonna be a rough draft of what happens and where it leads to. Which leads, episode 2 leads into the Clone Wars, which is 22 BBY to 19 BBY, and this is basically the 3 years in between episode 2 and 3. This is an animated show, but it's actually really dark. I mean, people are getting fucking beheaded. Clones are getting cut in half. I mean, I remember watching, before I even really like knew what Star Wars was, I did watch Clone Wars on Disney or whatever, and I just remember like, I'm like, oh, this is not like kiddie. This is a little dark, and that's why I think it really holds up, especially the final 4 episodes, which we'll get to. But we basically see Anakin and Obi-Wan's relationship leading into episode 3, and it really just makes the prequels better. We see Ahsoka, which is one of the best characters in Star Wars. You find out that she's under Anakin, and obviously she becomes one of the strongest Jedi ever. We see their connection throughout the show, and it really leads into episode 3, because the final 4, so if you don't know, they had 6 seasons of the show, and then Disney bought Star Wars, so then it was like canceled for a while, and Disney brought it back for season 7, which was the final season, so it wrapped everything up. And it was a really good finale. I mean, the final 4 episodes basically take place before, during, and after episode 3. So it's really cool to watch episode 3 with the Clone Wars. I'm pretty sure someone online has like made a big ass video where they meshed it together. You see like oh, Anakin and Obi-Wan fighting on this planet, because obviously in the Clone Wars, Ahsoka gets like put up for like a murder trial, and then the Jedi at the end are like, oh, we were wrong. But it's, you know, it was too late for them to say that, so she left the Jedi Order. So Anakin and her haven't seen each other in a while. And then, you know, we get the scene where they're like, oh, you know, Coruscant's under siege, we have to go save the Chancellor. And that's obviously the beginning of episode 3. Because if you don't know, the episode 3 takes place in like a week's time. I always thought it was months, because Padme tells Anakin she's pregnant, but she didn't look pregnant. And then all of a sudden she was like, she had a baby bump. But apparently, like George Lucas said, they just hit it well, because, I don't know. I always thought it took place over months, but it was actually like a week. So then they go to Chancellor Palpatine. Meanwhile, Ahsoka goes to Mandalore to save Mandalore from Maul, and it sucks watching these characters, because you always want them to win when you know the outcome. Like, you see Ahsoka like, we should all go together to Mandalore, which I think they were about to do, but then Anakin and Obi-Wan have to go to see the Chancellor, and this is the last time Ahsoka sees Anakin before he turns to Vader. And then we see the Siege of Mandalore, and we see Order 66, which I'll get into in a second, and then we basically see the end of Ahsoka's story right after episode 3. Speaking of episode 3, let's get to it. Episode 3, one of the, if not the best Star Wars film. I put episode 3 and I put a parentheses and I put Order 66, because Order 66 is one of, if not the biggest moment in Star Wars. I mean, it is really the lead up to Palpatine's plan, and then we see all the aftermath. I mean, the Jedi never really fully recovered from this, right? I mean, before Order 66, you have like 10,000 Jedi, right? And after Order 66, there's like 100. That's why every time I see someone on Twitter like, oh, every time they bring a Jedi back, it diminishes Order 66. I kind of get that, but then again, like 10,000 Jedi, it makes sense like 100 would survive, right? Given like whatever circumstances they were at. So episode 3, we see the Siege of Coruscant. They go and save Chancellor Palpatine. Another happy ending. And basically we see that Anakin and Padme are expecting a kid, and we really start seeing Palpatine get into Anakin's head, right? He's spending more time with Anakin. He's telling about Darth Plagueis the Wise. He knows Anakin is having these dreams of Padme dying, and so he knows that he's like, the dark side's the only way you can save someone you love. And so he's really manipulating Anakin. We see him get closer and closer. Obi-Wan goes and kills Grievous. Then we obviously see the final showdown where Mace Windu has Palpatine at the end of his lightsaber, and Anakin chooses to kill Mace Windu and save Palpatine, and this is where Palpatine becomes disfigured because of his own lightning. This man Palpatine gets like struck by his own lightning like 4 times in the series. Knights him as Darth Vader, and then Vader goes to Mustafar, and that's where we get, it's probably the best fight in the whole saga. I have one that comes later on because of it's like more of like a emotional connection to it, so it's not really like, oh, flashy. But this is like I think it holds the record for like the longest sword fight in cinema history. It's like 9.5 minutes. And Obi-Wan and Anakin. And a lot of people are like, well, it looks too choreographed, where it looks like they're just dancing. And fighting is dancing when it comes to cinema. But also, these two have trained with each other for 10 years, right? They know everyone's move sets, and the Jedi can sense moves also. So they're basically, it's like a symphony. It's like a dance where they're basically, countering each other, and that's why it looks so similar. They're doing the same exact moves. They're twirling at the same time, because everyone was like, well, Anakin's twirling. Why doesn't Obi-Wan just stab him? Obviously, 1, fucking Vader can't die yet because the originals already came out. But 2, they both fight at the same time, so Obi-Wan's twirling at the same time. And we get Order 66, which is the eradication of the Jedi. When before the Clone Wars show came out, we were just like, oh, the clones are just dicks who just killed a Jedi. But no, you find out that in the Clone Wars, Palpatine inserted a chip into every clone's head. So they're nice and they're loyal, and then right when Order 66 happens, they switch and they try to kill all the Jedi. And we see, and it's interesting because you see Rex, so if you don't know Rex, he's like one of the best clones ever. In the Clone Wars show, he like resists this for a second, because it happens, and Ahsoka's right in front of him, and he resists it for just long enough for her to realize that some shit's going on, and then he starts shooting at her, and then she takes his chip out and stuff. And it's really tragic, because there was an episode in the Clone Wars where one of the clones' chip malfunctions, and he's like, listen, and he kills his Jedi early, basically, and he's basically trying to warn everyone, and no one's taking him serious. And what sucks is if they did that and listened to him, it would have never happened. And we see Luke and Leia born, and we see Padme die. I always didn't like how Padme died, because Padme was such a strong... People always see like Star Wars has like not strong female characters because like Rey, but we had Leia in 1977 who was kick-ass. She stood on her own. We have Ahsoka, and Padme in episode 2 was badass. I mean, she had the ripped shirt. She was fighting for her own. She didn't need Obi-Wan to save her. She was fucking holding her own. Then in episode 3, she just dies of a broken heart, which I was like, that's kind of weird. I wish she went out, like, I wish George Lucas had her, like, go out, like, fighting, like, I know she would. But I always liked the theory that, because, when Luke and Leia are getting born, it's next to Anakin being born as Vader, so it's nice, like, symmetry there. So I always took it as, and the theory was Palpatine was taking her life force and putting it into Anakin just to save Anakin, right? Because even the droid bot, when she's dying, is like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know why she's dying, like broken heart, right? I think that droid bot just spit that shit out of his fucking robot ass. But so I think that's what happened. And we see obviously Leia go to Alderaan, foreshadow, and then we see Luke go to Tatooine, and that's how the prequel trilogy ends. I do want to mention Darth Maul quick, because I kind of glossed over him. Episode 1, he gets cut in half, and we never see him in the movies again until Solo. Basically, we find out in the Clone Wars that he did survive, and basically he had like trash robotic legs, and he kept himself alive for 12 years through like pure fucking hatred, right? Like pure hatred of Obi-Wan. He hates Obi-Wan. The only other person he hates nearly as much as Obi-Wan is Palpatine, because Palpatine killed his brother, and after the fight with Qui-Gon, Palpatine was like, yeah, I don't want you anymore, buddy. So that'll come back in Rebels. I just wanted to mention that quick. Then we jump ahead to Solo, which is 10 BBY, which I will mention, Fallen Order does take place in this. This is the video game with Cal Kestis. I'm not really going to go into it because it's just the video game stuff, but he might become in live action later. He is a cool Jedi. I like him. He was in Order 66 and he survived and all that. But yeah, we get Solo, which is basically the origins of Han Solo, and I really do love this movie. I mean, this is like probably the most underrated Star Wars movie, because it came out right after Last Jedi, where everyone was really like pissed off at Star Wars and didn't want to support it. So it came out like 4 months after Last Jedi, so no one really went to go see it. I love this movie. The humor was good. The guy who plays Han Solo really encapsulates like his whole persona and how Han Solo acts and stuff, and I just really fuck with that. You see like more of like, you know, the syndicates, like the Pike Syndicate. You get Kira, who is bad as shit, and we basically find out at the end that, you know, Maul is running this like syndicate. So, like, we don't really have a payoff. Like, we know how Maul's story ends, but we don't know how his story ends with being, like, a syndicate. We just saw him in live action again. I remember I was like, holy fuck. Basically see Solo meet Lando, and Donald Glover plays Lando phenomenally. I mean, he gets the mannerisms down, the speech pattern, everything perfectly. His charisma. We see the Kessel Run. I mean, seeing the Kessel Run was crazy. I didn't think they would actually do it. We see, and just him get the Falcon, and him meeting Chewie and all this, and we see him, you know, how he enlisted in the Empire in the beginning, and which was, I think, alluded to in A New Hope. And this is a really solid movie, and it's a good character piece on Solo. So we skip ahead 1 year to Kenobi, which is 9BBY. As you know, Kenobi's been in hiding for 10 years on Tatooine. He's guilt-ridden. He's watching over Luke. Owen doesn't really like Obi-Wan because he kind of blames Obi-Wan for Anakin's death, because obviously no one in the galaxy knows what really happened. They all think Anakin died. They don't know that Anakin is Vader. He doesn't want him like making Luke a Jedi and teaching Luke all that dumb shit. You know, because obviously after Order 66, the whole propaganda wheel started turning, where it's like, oh, Jedi are evil, right? So no one really likes the Jedi, and by the time you get to the sequels, like, the Jedi almost don't exist, right? Like, it's like a legend. And we basically see Kenobi, and he gets out of hiding because he is told that Leia was kidnapped. And I really like that as a story, actually, was him and Leia. Because, you know, in A New Hope, when Luke says, yeah, old Ben saved me, and she's like, old Ben? And it's like, oh, you know old Ben? And so, like, now I love that we have that, where, like, yeah, she knows old Ben. And he basically saves her. He finds out Anakin's alive. But we get, a really solid duel between Anakin and Kenobi. And Kenobi really this whole fight is really just closure for Kenobi. Kenobi's blamed himself for 10 years now about everything that happened. That the Jedi falling, Anakin turning to the dark side. When in reality, like, Anakin tells Kenobi, I really do think this is like part of Anakin coming out, because I love the color grading in the scene where it's the blue saber, so it's the blue and it's the light on Anakin's face.
I'm not your failure, Obi-Wan. You didn't kill Anakin Skywalker. I did.
But I really do think that this gave closure to Kenobi. Kenobi's like, you're right, Anakin did this to himself. And I really think that helps him stay on for the next 9 years and become, you know, then obviously watching over Luke and A New Hope and all that. And he rapidly ages. I mean, they had to make it in canon that two sons rapidly ages you. But he goes from Ewan McGregor to Alec Guinness in 9 years. Crazy shit. Then we skip ahead 4 years and we get to Rebels, which is 5 BBY to 1 BBY. This is basically the form of the rebellion. When we get to Rebels and Andor and stuff, this is really seeing the rebellion, like, starting to come out. Because you've had a rebellion since episode 3. But they've been really low-key, like, you know, super secret meetings and stuff. But now they're starting to fight back against the Empire. We basically meet Ezra, and there's a Jedi named Kanan, which I think is one of the best Jedi. I love Kanan, and I wish we saw more of him outside of the show, but his story wraps up really nice. We meet Hera Syndulla, we meet Sabine, Chopper, who, if you don't know, Chopper's droid, if you look it up on YouTube, his droid sounds are him talking just muffled, but you can, when you start listening really closely, you can actually hear him, and he'd be saying, like, the F word and, like, cussing, like, and shit, and you can hear it. It's funny. Chopper's a really funny droid. Basically, all that shit happens. The gist of it is you meet Thrawn, which is like this blue alien who is like the scariest Empire like leader, basically like general. And he's really smart. He outsmarts the rebels all the time. I'm just gonna cut to it. Kanan, and you see Maul in this show. This is where Maul's story ends, and I'm gonna talk about this. Maul's story, I think, ends beautifully. Right? He's he's helping them find holocrons and stuff, but then you find out he's really just looking for Obi-Wan, right? He's looking for Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan did this to him. Obi-Wan ruined his life all those years ago, and he has such hatred. He finds out that Obi-Wan is on Tatooine, so he goes to Tatooine. He starts losing his mind in the desert, and he finds Old Ben sitting there. And they basically just talk about how, what stuff that happened. They have this fight, and you're expecting it to be this grand fight, but it's 3 moves. It's block, block, jab down the middle, which if you don't know, that's what he did to Qui-Gon in episode 1, because Obi-Wan knows how to adapt, and Darth Maul is just fueled on rage. When you're fueled on rage, you just do rash decisions. And then you get this really tender moment between them where instead of just lashing out and dying, he's sitting in Old Ben's arms, and he's like, is he the chosen one? Because in the convoy before this, he basically figures out Obi-Wan why he's here, that there's a kid he's, saving, and that's when Obi-Wan brings his lightsaber up, right when he mentions Luke. And he's like, is he the chosen one? Obi-Wan says he is, and Maul says he will avenge us, and then he dies in Obi-Wan's arms. And I love that because, like I said earlier, he does hate Palpatine, and now since he's dead, Maul's dying, he just wants to at least know there's hope, right? There's hope. That's the whole theme of Star Wars, is hope. Remember Rogue One? Rebellions are built on hope, right? Andor, you have to find hope in the darkest times. And I love that ending for Kenobi, or for Maul. And then we see Ezra basically have to sacrifice himself, and all these these space whales that can go through space-time basically take Ezra and Thrawn on a ship into the unknown, which we'll get to in Ahsoka, and they basically go missing. And Kanan ends up sacrificing himself to save the crew, and he's blind because I think a lightsaber got really close to his eyes and it blinded him. But in his last moments, he uses the Force, and the Force allows him to see his wife Hera one more time, and he dies. That was really touching. I really like that. Then we have Andor, which is 5 BBY. Andor is some of the best Star Wars, period, but it's definitely the best Disney Star Wars. It's a little slower at first. It's really hard. I always tell my friends, just get past. It's not, and when I say get past, it's not a bad thing. It's just it's, if you know anime is always split up into 3 episode arcs, and basically, it's the same here. The first 3 episodes are him getting off the planet. The other 3 episodes are a heist. The next 3 episodes are a prison break, and it's so well made. I mean, the dialogue in this show is phenomenal. Seeing people come to grips with, sacrificing everything for the rebellion. There's a character named Luthen in this show. He has the best, probably one of my favorite monologues in the whole saga, where he's talking this one undercover spy is asking him what do you sacrifice? I'm over here busting my ass. He's like, what do I sacrifice? Everything. I'm working towards he says something like, I'm working towards a sunrise that I'll never see. And it's so beautiful because he knows he'll never see all his hard work paid off. No one's gonna know Luthen, right? When the rebellion happens, they're never gonna be like, oh, Luthen this, he's gonna be a silent hero, and he understands that, but he really truly cares. And I love that this show gets into the Saw Gerrera and some of the stuff we see in Rogue One, which is what the people in the rebellion will do, and they're doing some shady stuff. Saw's like a extremist. He doesn't like the Empire, but he be doing some sketchy stuff to make sure that the rebels win. And even Andor does that in the beginning of Rogue One. I mean, Andor, remember his friend breaks his leg and the stormtroopers are coming. He has to shoot his friend in the back and run away, right? He's not, he's a good man, but he has to do some of these horrendous acts to keep the rebellion going. And we get the prison break, and there's not really an ending to Andor, because Andor Season 2 does come out this year. What we do know about Andor Season 2 is that every 3 episodes is 1 year, and it will lead literally, like they said, it'll be minutes before Rogue One, where we see him in Rogue One. So it's gonna Andor, and then it's gonna be Rogue One, and then A New Hope. You could basically watch these back to back to back, which I love. And the one thing in Andor that was super cool was when he's in prison, he's making these parts that you don't know what he's making the parts for, and then at the end you find out that they were parts for the Death Star, which ultimately kills him in the end, but what he helps to destroy. And that was really poetic. I really love that part. The whole prison, what this show does great is making the Empire scary. We get rebels and all that, where obviously you have Thrawn, but then you see the Empire just kind of do some dumbass decisions, right? And I love how in this series, even one TIE fighter going through a valley is scaring the shit out of Andor and his friends. And and then when you go to the prison, like he goes in prison for 8 months for nothing. It was just like the guy trying to rile him up. And he goes in prison, and you keep seeing these lights flicker, and you don't even know what's going on. And then this dude here named Kino Loy, I think his name is. Also, I don't mention it here, but the scene where Kino finally realizes that the Empire is messed up and they don't care about him, and he's not going to get out of here without rebellion, and he finally, Andor asks him again, he's like, how many guards are on each level, which he's been asking the whole episode, and he finally cracks and says, never more than 12. That is just like, the good thing about Andor is like, it is slow at times, but the buildup makes it where you get a payoff like that, where he's going to crack and finally help Cassian. It makes it so much better, and a lot of more Star Wars shows need to learn this. He's like, yeah, my days are almost up. Just focus. I don't want to even think about a rebellion. Blah, blah, blah. I just want to get out of here. And you find out that basically anytime your time's up, they move you to a different prison or a different floor, or they send you down to the lower level and they kill you. They have like a shock ground, and they just basically kill. So anytime you see the lights dimming, that's hundreds of men and women just getting electrocuted to death. And it's really dark. And I love when Star Wars goes dark. I mean, there's a scene in Kenobi where Vader snaps a kid's neck. It was like a teenager's neck. And I'm like, I love when Star Wars goes dark. I think we should have a rated R Vader film. And I can't wait to see what they do for Andor Season 2. Because, I mean, it's only going to get darker as you lead up to Rogue One. And then A New Hope. Speaking of Rogue One, we get to Rogue One. 1 BBY. This should be like 5 minutes BBY. Because, like, this whole movie is like the 2 days. And then literally the ending is like, I swear to God, 30 seconds before A New Hope starts. We see Jen Erso. I love Jen Erso. I wish we got more of her. I mean, obviously she's in one movie, and obviously, spoiler alert, everyone in this movie fucking dies, right? Which I love that they had the balls to do that, and they weren't like, oh, everyone survives. I'm glad everyone died, because you have to have sacrifice. This Rogue One goes back to episode 4, where at the end they're like, oh, we had a rogue squadron. Many people died trying to get the plans of the Death Star, and this is that movie. And I just love it. I mean, this is such a good concept. We basically meet Jyn Erso, and she basically, her dad is the one who put the fall. If you haven't seen any Star Wars, basically in episode 4, the Death Star, the way they're able to blow it up is because there was a 5-foot hole in the side of it that they were able to shoot through and blow it up. And I remember that was like a big plot hole.
So no weaknesses at all, huh?
No.
You hesitated there. Is there something I should know?
No, it's virtually indestructible, like 99.99%.
Okay, wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't ask what's the .01.
Well, I mean, there's this little hole. It was kind of an aesthetic choice by the architect, and if you shoot a laser into this hole, the station blows up.
Whoa. Right, so we're gonna plug up that hole?
Yeah, we can get it done tomorrow if price is no object. We'll get estimates.
Get estimates, yeah.
You find out in this movie that Jyn Erso's dad planted that in there for the future to be able to destroy, because he was basically forced at will, like in order for his family to be safe, to basically work on the Death Star for years, and like he was the mastermind behind it. So we basically see that. We see her meet Andor and all these other people, and we see the Death Star being used, and it was really scary. It was literally causing an eclipse. Like, it was a really good. This movie's so fucking good. This is literally, when I tell people Rogue One's in like my top 3 Star Wars films, they like shit their diaper. But I'm sorry, I love Rogue One to death. I mean, this is a perfect example of doing stuff in between episode 3 and 4, but making it like, it just helps the stories. It's like how Clone Wars helped episode 3 and episode 2 and episode 1. Like, this movie just makes A New Hope so much better, because first off, it leads right into A New Hope, and then you hear about the sacrifices that to get the plans. You actually see it happen, and then when the Death Star finally blows up, it's like all these people, Andor, and everything that in Andor show and in Rogue One led up to that moment, like all these sacrifices. It's phenomenal. Also, Mon Mothma and Andor, she is so good in that show. She's like this high-ranking person on Coruscant, but she's also funding the rebellion. And so she's living like lavish, and her husband, all these people are rich, and she just hates it, but she has to put on a facade to, like, because she's, again, the long game with the rebellion. What the rebellion is basically what Palpatine did. It's just a long game of waiting. So Rogue One, obviously, they get the plans of the Death Star. The Death Star blows up Scarif. Everyone dies. Leia gets the plans. We get one of the best scenes in the whole saga, which is Vader. Like, this is prime Vader, right? Right before he meets Luke and all that. And he's in a hallway, and he's basically just slaughtering all these rebels, right? And I remember seeing this, I was like, holy fuck. One thing Disney does get right with Star Wars is Vader. I don't think they've ever fucked up Vader, in my opinion. And then basically Leia gets the plans. We see Leia and we see the Tantive 4 go to Lightspeed, and as you know, once New Hope starts, it's the Tantive 4 coming out of Lightspeed and the Star Destroyer right behind it with Vader and them tailing her. And it's just such a good, like, tie in between the original saga and this movie. I love when they do that shit. Then we get to episode 4, Zero BBY. We meet Luke Skywalker. He's a moisture farmer on Tatooine. We see him meet old Ben. We meet the R2-D2 C-3PO. And I love, George Lucas always said that this whole story is R2-D2 telling the story later on, because R2-D2 has been through it all. He's been around all this time, right? And I just love that. I love that he survived in the end. Spoiler. But we get episode 4. We see Ben. They go to the Death Star. We meet Han Solo. And he doesn't want anything to do with the rebellion. He just wants credits to help them move. Then he gets sucked into the rebellion. And his character arc is great because he goes from not caring to... And Leia even says, like, you care deep down. He comes and saves the day at the end of episode 4. We meet Vader. We don't meet Palpatine. I think they mention him, but you don't... I always forget, you don't meet Palpatine in person till episode 6. Episode 5, there's a scene, like, where it's a hologram, but you don't meet him in person till episode 6. He's just alluded to in the background. And we basically have them fighting the rebellion. Obi-Wan and Vader meet again, and it's really, like, this sentimental fight because, you know, Obi-Wan is just obviously heartbroken where they left off last time, but Vader... you know, fueled with anger, and Obi-Wan sacrifices himself to save Luke and all them, and he's basically able to mentor Luke with Yoda, which we'll get to in episode 5. They basically go to the Yavin 4. Like I said, the Battle of Yavin, it's either they blow the Death Star up or the Death Star is going to blow up the base of operations for the rebellion. And as you know, use the Force, Luke blows up the Death Star. That's how episode 4 ends. It's iconic. How else can you explain episode 4 without saying iconic? Then we get episode 5, which is 3 years later, 3 years after the Battle of Yavin. The rebels have been just moving from planet to planet to get a new base of operations. They find Hoth. The Empire finally finds them. And we have the Battle of Hoth, which is, you know, obviously the AT-ATs, and, you know, they wrap the wire around and they fall. And this is basically like, anytime you listen to someone make a sequel and they want the sequel dark, they say, I want my sequel to be like The Empire Strikes Back. Empire Strikes Back, they lose, right? When they made Infinity War, they said, oh, Infinity War, we want that to be The Empire Strikes Back. The heroes lost, right? Anytime you have a movie, you have a trilogy, and you have one of the movies where the heroes lose, it just makes their eventual win so much better and makes their character arcs a lot better. They're on the run in this movie the whole time. They're on the run from the Empire. I mean, Han and them are running for their life in the Falcon. Ever since they leave Hoth, they're going through the asteroid belt. They're clinging on to the Star Destroyer. You know, they're basically trying to run away from the Empire and Boba Fett and all that. And then we have Luke, who goes to Dagobah, who meets Yoda, which is one of, if not the best Star Wars character. I fucking love Yoda. Yoda spits in this movie heavy. I mean, he says, do or do not, there is no try. And then Luke says, I don't believe it. And then Yoda says, that is why you fail. I mean, he just has such good lines that pertain to Luke, obviously, but pertain to just how you should view life and how you should keep going. Like, do or do not, like, there is no try, right? You're either going to do it or not. You can try, you know, but if you don't do it, it doesn't matter. And we basically get, obviously, we see Bespin, we meet Lando. I love Lando so much. We get, you know, the Battle of Sky City, which is, again, a really good lightsaber fight where, you know, Luke and Vader fight for the first time. We see, you know, obviously the iconic Han going into, you know, getting frozen, and Leia says, I love you, and he says, I know. That, obviously, iconic. I mean, this movie is just so iconic. Obviously, we get probably one of the biggest plot twists, if not the biggest plot twist in movie history, which is, no, I am your father. I mean, I didn't even know Star Wars. Me and my friends didn't even watch Star Wars yet, but we knew that line. We would say it into the fan like Vader, and you know who Vader is. You know that line. I mean, I just wish I was born where I watched that for the first time and I didn't know. You know, but, you know, in today's world, everyone knows. Basically finds out that Vader is his father. He escapes, and then they're just left looking at the galaxy, hiding out, Luke without a hand, and he lost his lightsaber. I mean, it really ends bleakly. Right? Then we skip ahead 1 year to episode 6, Return of the Jedi, 4ABY. I love this title so much because you're like, oh, Return of the Jedi. This is like Luke bringing the Jedi back. No, it's Return of the Jedi, Anakin Skywalker, Return of Anakin to the light side. I love this movie so much. Obviously, we go to the forest moon of Endor. We meet the Ewoks, and they're basically trying to hide out as they make the second Death Star. Well, obviously, the first act of this movie is saving Han from Jabba the Hutt. And we see Luke just aura farming the whole Jabba the Hutt clan. He just walks in there like this, You know, he's like, oh, yeah, you saved me. Drops down the Rancor pit. Doesn't matter. Fucking cuts the dude's throat. Walks out. Saves Han. Kills Jabba the Hutt. Boba Fett goes into the Sarlacc pit, which we'll get into in a little bit. And then they go to Endor. I almost say Andor. Endor. And we see the Death Star 2. Luke knows it's a trap. He shouldn't go there. Same with Bespin. He knows he probably shouldn't go to Death Star 2, but he goes there. And you have to remember, to everyone else outside of this, like when you meet Moff Gideon in Mandalorian and he looks petrified seeing the one Star Destroyer come, everyone's like, why is he scared of one Star Destroyer? To everyone in the Empire, Luke Skywalker walked into a room escorted by Vader to meet Palpatine, and he walked out with Palpatine and Vader dead, right? They don't know exactly what happened in there, but that's all they see, so they're fucking scared shitless of Luke, right? Luke the legend. And we basically get to my favorite lightsaber fight in the whole saga, which is the fight between Luke and Vader again. This is just so emotionally ran, if that makes sense. Like, this, like, yes, they're fighting and the fight's cool, and you see Vader just, like, you know, taunting Luke, and you see Palpatine taunting Luke as well and saying, you know, like, kill Vader out of your anger. It's okay to let the hate consume you. You can become my new apprentice. It really shows that, you know, Palpatine never really cared for Vader. Vader was just a toy to Palpatine to get what he wants, and he'll drop Vader whenever he wants, right? And we basically see Luke in all black, and then you're like, oh shit, is he going to turn to the dark side? And after fighting, his flap opens and it's white, revealing that white was under the outfit the whole time, which means Luke was never going to turn to the dark side. And it really snaps for him when he cuts Vader's hand off, because he's letting the rage consume him for a second, and he sees Vader's robotic hand, and he looks at his own. It's such a powerful moment. He looks at his own hand, which is robotic, and he's like, this man has been through pain, and that's my father. And he throws his lightsaber away, and he says one of the best lines in the whole saga, where I am a Jedi like my father before me. And it just pans to Vader's helmet with no dialogue. And I hate that they added no in this next scene later, because, like, just seeing Vader's helmet, it's like The Mandalorian, where you can tell there's so much emotion going on in Anakin, even if the mask is covering it. I just love it so much. And basically, Palpatine starts electrocuting Luke, and he's like, and Luke's pleading to Anakin, and you see Anakin just looking back and forth, and he finally picks up Palpatine, throws him over the ledge, and saves his son. And we get some of the dialogue in this next scene, like when he's dragging Vader out, and he's like, you know, take my mask off, I want to see you with my own eyes. And you see Anakin, you see this broken person, you know, he's scarred, he's deathly white, and Luke's like, you know, no, I have to save you, and he says, you already have. And I don't know, that just hits me so, like, him saying you already have saved me, Luke, especially after the scene earlier when they're on Endor, and he's basically talking about, I know Anakin Skywalker's in there, and there's a beat where it just, Vader pauses, and he says, and he basically looks at Luke, and he says, it is too late for me, son. Which means, like, Anakin wants so desperately to save himself, but he knows these past 19 years he's done unspeakable things to the galaxy. And Luke does not care, because that's his father, and he knows there's kindness in him, and he knows he's been manipulated. And basically Vader says, tell your sister you were right about me, and he passes away. Anakin Skywalker, he was only 45 years old, my boy! And he dies. And Luke takes his body and obviously cremates him on Endor, and it was a powerful moment. I mean, they ended this saga beautifully. Anakin's story arc ends beautifully, like, and everyone's like, well, Luke's the chosen one, and not Anakin, because Luke saved the galaxy. No, Anakin is the chosen one. Anakin, yes, he did these dark deeds for 19 years, but he came back, and he came back to the light side and killed Palpatine. That's why I hate some of the sequel shit, which we'll get into. He killed Palpatine and saved the galaxy, and he was the chosen one all along. How he got there was a little rocky, but that's the end of the original trilogy. Skip ahead 5 years to The Mandalorian, which is 9 BBY to 11 BBY, and that's all 3 seasons. This was such a great return to form after the sequels, where we get this bounty hunter, and we really explore the galaxy kind of right after Episode 6, you know? And it makes sense. Everyone's like, well, the Empire was defeated. The galaxy is so large that, yes, you defeat the Death Star stuff, you're going to still have Empire extremists. You're still going to have parts I mean, even in Season 3, we see a Dooku supremacist. I mean, Dooku has been around for, like, what? Fucking 30 years, 40 years? Like, you know, it makes sense in a galaxy this big. I mean, there's still people out there that still idolize, you know, the Big H guy, if you know what I mean. You know, the Big H guy. It's fucking crazy. First off, why would you even idolize that guy? Second off, there is still people that idolize him, and it's been 80 years. So it makes sense that in this, and obviously, you don't have to be an idiot, or you have to be an idiot to not see that the Empire is based off of, and Nazi Germany. I don't know if I can say that word on TikTok, Nazi, or on YouTube, but you can obviously see that. But especially in the sequels, you can see that when they do the hail. But we see this gritty universe where there's still remnants of the Empire out there. You meet Moff Gideon, who was a high-ranking Empire official who wants to bring glory back to the Empire, which you end up finding out he still wants his own nefarious stuff. And we basically see him meet Baby Yoda, aka Grogu, it was such like a breath of fresh air seeing this dynamic, right? You see the Mandalorian who's cold, he doesn't show his face, he doesn't show emotion, and you see this baby that you can obviously tell is taking an effect on him, and he ends up, I'll just give the baby away, and he's sitting there, he's like, I can't do it, and he saves the baby, and we see him fight Moff Gideon, and basically you find out Moff Gideon has the Darksaber, which if the Darksaber is from Clone Wars, it's basically the Mandalorians on Mandalore. There was a Mandalorian who was a Jedi, and he made his own lightsaber, which is the Darksaber, and it passes down through the Mandalorians. And the only way to win that is if you win it in battle. So, so Moff Gideon basically was the one who led the assault on Mandalore and basically glassed the whole planet and fucking destroyed it. So he owns the Darksaber. We get to season 2 where he's basically searching for Grogu. Season 2 is all about searching for Grogu's home. Who are the Jedi? Like I said, no one really knows who the Jedi are. Basically, he ends up finding out that Ahsoka, he goes and finds Ahsoka. We see Ahsoka in live action, played beautifully by Rosario Dawson. And we basically see him find out that his name's Grogu, and he wants to give it to Ahsoka, but Ahsoka's like, I'm not his family. You have to go find his family. And it was a big-ass yap session if my whole battery fucking died. Basically, then we see Moff Gideon attacking Mando, and we basically see them fight, and Mando wins, so he is the owner of the Darksaber. And we see one of the most iconic moments in Disney Star Wars. It's Luke coming in on the one X-Wing, and he kills all the fucking robots, and he reveals himself, and he basically takes Grogu. And this is one of the saddest moments, in my opinion, too. It echoes Return of the Jedi a little bit, where Vader says, take my mask off, I want to see you with my own eyes, where Mando takes his helmet off, Baby Grogu touches his face, and they just look at each other with no words, and it's so sad. You see Din just crying, which you've never seen before, and it's so damn good. There's also Bill Burr's in this season 2, and he's one of the best characters Disney's made. He's basically this guy who we saw in season 1, and he comes back, and he's basically helping Mando, and they go to this Empire base, and we see Din take his helmet off to scan his face to save Grogu, and it's just like, Din just doesn't care, he wants to save Grogu, right? And because, Moff Gideon has him on this ship, which is the finale. And we see this one Empire guy talking about, we glassed this planet, to the Empire. And we see Bill Burr. Bill Burr's facial acting in this scene is so good, because you see him just trying to fake the laugh, and he just can't do it. He shakes his head, he takes his gun out, blasts him. And we do see Boba Fett again in this show. We find out Boba Fett survived. We see his starship again, and we see the iconic bomb that he has that just cuts all sound and blows up. It was great. We get to Mando season 3, which was kind of mid in my opinion, because the first half of it doesn't really matter. It sucks because season 3 is forgettable. The show is good, and season 3 is not bad. It's just season 3 is very forgettable in my opinion until the end, where Moff Gideon comes back and he basically dies again. And they allude, the only good thing that season 3 does is they allude to Moff Gideon and cloning, and the Empire wants cloning. And as you know, in the sequels, as much as we hate it, it is canon. Palpatine did clone himself, and even one of the First Republic officers is like, there's some dark shit going out in the Outer Rim. Like, no one really knows, but there is some dark shit. And it's alluding to Exegol and Palpatine. So I love how these shows are kind of setting up the sequels as Clone Wars made the prequels better, which is what they can do. And we basically see, and I'll get to how Grogu and Mando are back together, which is Book of Boba Fett, which I'll get into in a second here. But we basically see at the end Grogu and Mando when they have a house to themselves. We get to 9 ABY, which is Skeleton Crew, which actually just came out, and it's always the shows I'm not hyped for, which end up being one of the better ones. When Disney Plus first came out, there was WandaVision, there was Falcon Winter Soldier, and there was Loki. And I was not hyped for Loki. I was like, there's no point in this show. It ended up being one of, if not my favorite Disney Plus show. Skeleton Crew, I was like, it's like Goonies, but Star Wars. I never saw the Goonies. It's made for kids, so I can't hate it, But wow, this show is good. We have an actual mystery in the show that I was intrigued with. Basically, these kids are on this planet called and they find a spaceship and they escape on accident, and they're trying to get home. It's like a pirate ship. It's all pirates in this movie, within the show, which is really cool. And no one believes them. They're like, Aten's like a legend, like a myth. Like no one knows where Aten is. You basically find out that Aten has like all this treasure, because you basically find out that this AI is running like the whole planet, and this planet, all these parents came together and shielded the planet in like this veil of gas away from the whole galaxy, because they say the galaxy is pure evil, right? They don't even know that like Order 66 happened. They don't know that, the AI does, but like, they don't know about the rebellion. They don't know about the Empire. They don't know about the Empire dying. They don't know about any of this stuff. Like, even in one of the books, they're talking about Alderaan. Everyone's like, Alderaan blew up in episode 4. And we basically meet Jude Law's character, his character is so nice, because they could have easily done he has the Force, he is a pirate, but he's going to have a redemption arc and save these children. He really doesn't. He betrays the children, the chance he gets. He's not a pure Jedi. All we find out about him is that he was homeless, he met a Jedi, she helped him a bit, and then she was hunted down and killed. I don't think this was Order 66. I think this was after Order 66, because if you don't know, after episode 3, there's basically Inquisitors who are helmed by Vader, and they basically go across the galaxy looking for Jedi to kill them, and that's how they find Kenobi. So I think that's what happened. And basically, so he has the Force, he's a little trained, but he's not like a pure Jedi. And I hope there's a season 2, because at the end, the kids outsmart him, and they, take control of their planet back from the pirates. They blow the pirate ships up, and you see his character like smile, almost like he's proud of them, right? And even when the kids are leaving, even after he betrayed him, the kid looks at him, he's like, John, and he yells at him, not in like a fuck you kind of way, but like, are you coming? Like, I'm worried for you. And you see him look back and smile a little bit. So I think these kids are having an effect on him, and I'm really interested to see where he goes in season 1, because the last time we see him, he's looking at his pirate ship exploding, and he's basically has a smirk on his face. So I'm really interested to see where they take this character, because I do think he'll have maybe not like 100% redemption arc, but I do think he cares for these kids deep down. Like, even when the one kid is in the ship and the ship goes down, he does look affected. He gets mad at it. He's like, see, I told you, like, this is not kid shit. Like, this has effects. Like, she died. Like, you guys caused this. Like, he doesn't want these kids to get hurt, right? I generally do believe that. I think he does, if he doesn't want to admit it, form a connection with these kids, and I can't wait to see where season 2 goes. We skip to 10 ABY, which is the Book of Boba Fett. Honestly, a mid-show. The first 3 episodes are good, because it's like, Boba escapes the Sarlacc pit, and then basically he's with the Tusken Raiders for 5 years, and he's living on the land of Tatooine. But then the two best episodes of the show are episodes like 4 and 5, which they just focus on Mando. And if you don't know, so Mando season 2 came out, and then like COVID was rampant, so they couldn't do Mandalorian season 3, but they were already filming Boba Fett. So in my opinion, their biggest mistake, I think they took what was supposed to be the premiere of Mando season 3 and put it into this, where you see him basically trying to learn how to use the Darksaber, and he basically goes to Luke's planet, which Ahsoka's there, which I hate so much, because we need to see Ahsoka meeting Luke on screen. Like, they meet off screen. That is such a big moment that people have wanted since 2008 when the Clone Wars came out, right? And we see it's off screen. She's already there. It's crazy. I mean, we get some good moments where she's like, you're so much like your father, and Luke smiles, and we basically see Luke training Baby Yoda, and Mando wants to see him so bad, but he knows he's not supposed to, so he leaves the planet. And then basically, like, what I don't like is Luke's basically telling Baby Yoda or Grogu, like, here's Beskar chainmail. If you take this, I'll bring you back to your father. Or here's a lightsaber if you want to be a Jedi. And we don't see what he picks yet, which I don't get, because Luke was even telling me, like, it doesn't have to be so black and white. Like, I feel like a good Jedi, like, you should be able to have connections and stuff. Like, having connections is what makes you human, what makes you pure, right? And I just feel like Luke doing that is kind of what the old Jedi used to do, and I think that's where we see Luke in the sequels, where he finds that out. And we see at the end of the Book of Boba Fett, basically, Boba Fett calls Mando to help, and we see Mando and Grogu reconnect again. And it was a good moment. It was really heartfelt. I just hate that it happened in this show. That's why I think the first half, I just think they didn't want to wait another year, because they were like, oh, people can't wait a year. Their attention spans are fried. So they put it in here, but I really do think that this should have been in the first half of The Mandalorian, was him getting Grogu back and all that. Because that episode of Mando going to see Luke and Ahsoka is one of the best episodes they made. Also, quick side note that I forgot to mention, Cad fucking Bane is in this show at the end, yeah, he ends up dying, but just seeing Cad Bane in live action was actually crazy and really got me hyped. Let me skip ahead 1 year to Ahsoka, which just came out, and this show was really good. I really love this show. We see Lothal again. We see Sabine Wren. We see Ahsoka, and a lot of people were kind of like shitting on her performance because they're like, oh, she's not as joyful as she was in the Clone Wars. She's been through hell on Earth. Like, she's joyful in the Clone Wars. Even the final episode of the Clone Wars, she's just... And she was like, oh, I didn't mention in Rebels, she finds out Anakin's still alive and he is Vader and they fight and all that. But she's like joking a little bit in Rebels, but still, Rebels from here to here is like 30 years, right? 20, 30 years between this. So yeah, I don't expect her to be so like joyful all the time, especially with what's going on, where she like feels so bad that Ezra's gone, right? I mean, she deep down wants to find Ezra, and we basically find out that they have a map to Thrawn. And he's in another galaxy, which is crazy. We've never seen another galaxy in Star Wars before. And basically, they pose this really good question to her and Sabine. And Ahsoka's doing the right thing, but Sabine lets her emotions take over, where it's like, the bad guys are like, here, you can take, we'll make a promise to you. You give us the map to Thrawn, you can come with us and get Ezra, right? Which, on one hand, yeah, we save Ezra, he's been marooned here for, 10 years. But on the other hand, you're giving Thrawn a chance to get back into the galaxy again. He's a very strong, especially in this rebuilding phase of the Empire, where there's still remnants after Episode 6 and we're leading into the sequels. You don't want Thrawn around, right? But, Sabine lets her emotions take over her. She gives him the map, and they do uphold their end. And that's what makes Thrawn such a good villain, is he upholds his word. When they get there and you see Thrawn, and Thrawn's like, we'll give you supplies and stuff and you can go see Ezra. And that's what he says. But you will be stuck here because we're going to fucking leave, is basically what they said. And this show basically ends with Sabine saving, Ezra goes back on the ship basically and hides out, and he goes back to the main galaxy, and he sees Hera. So obviously that's going to lead into season 2, where he's like, they're moving on this planet, blah, blah, blah. And Ahsoka and Sabine are stuck on this planet in this other galaxy. So I'm really excited to see how that goes. We basically, the main bad guy, Balin Skulls, I love him because he used to be a Jedi, like, I guess, knight, and then he fell. But he's not, like, purely evil. Like, once he gets to, and rip the actor, he died right before the show came out. They're going to recast him. He did a great job. Ray Stevenson. He basically, once he gets to this planet in this unknown galaxy, like, Thrawn's talking, he's like, yeah, I'm out. He, like, tells his, like, little, his sidekick, he's like, yeah, you can help if you want. I'm out of here because, I'm gone. He says, throughout the whole show, he says something's calling to him. He doesn't know what it is, but something's calling to him on this planet. We don't know what it is yet. And the last shot is we see him on this statue, which is like a wizard pointing to a hill that has a light on it. And that's it. We don't know where that leads or what's going on. So it's going to be really interesting to see what's calling to him. If it's a villain, what is it? Also, I don't know how I didn't even talk about the Anakin scene. You can call it fan service. You can say whatever you want. Seeing that whole episode of Clone Wars era Ahsoka and Clone Wars Anakin played by Hayden Christensen in the Clone Wars armor. I mean, we've been wanting that for years. And seeing that, and Hayden played it beautifully. And seeing like this version of Vader, like post Return of the Jedi, where he knows everything that's happened, but he still looks like Anakin, and he's using it to teach Ahsoka. It was done so damn good, and I loved every second of it. I hope we see more of it in season 2. And that's how Ahsoka ends. Now I put right here the Mandalorian movie, because as you can see, there's 23 years in between Ahsoka and Episode 7. So I just put here because we don't know exactly when it takes place. This is the Mandalorian movie. It's already shot. We don't know when. We don't know exactly what date. We know it's 2026. We don't know when it takes place. But they said like this is gonna be like the Infinity War, like Avengers type movie of all the shows, basically, where Ahsoka and all of them I think are teaming up. I don't know. We don't know exactly. Like we know the villain is some obscure person, but they always mention how like it's supposed to be them versus Thrawn. So I really don't know why it's a movie or what's happening, but that's all we know. Then we skip ahead to 34 ABY, the first of the 3 sequels, Episode 7, The Force Awakens, which is the best sequel in my opinion. We basically see Rey, who is on Jakku, and she escapes on the Millennium Falcon because we find out that Kylo Ren, who is obsessed with like Luke and Vader, he's obsessed with Vader, who's his grandfather, because he is Leia's son. They find a map to Luke Skywalker, but there's another piece that's in this little droid, and that meets Rey and all that. So they're chasing them. We basically find Han again, and we see Finn, who Finn is the most poorly written character, and I feel so bad because he had the most potential, in my opinion. He was a stormtrooper who hated what he was doing, and then they were setting him up to be a Jedi, and then they didn't go through with it. And then in episode 9, all of a sudden he has like, you know, the Force, and he has like feelings through the Force, which I was like, it just feels like they should have just fleshed it out way better. I think he should have been the main character. I think he should have been the Jedi. I do like, however, the reveal in episode 7 at the end where he's trying to pull the lightsaber towards him, and you find it goes past him, and you find out that it's Rey who was the Jedi and who had the Force and all that, and who the lightsaber was calling to a lot. But they, again, just kind of not good writing in this trilogy because they went from one director to another director who wrote something totally different to the same director from episode 7 who acted like it was a trilogy when it wasn't because he didn't write the middle part. It's kind of weird. And obviously at the end, I'm just kind of like, I haven't seen these movies in a while. I don't really watch the sequels that much, but they basically go to Maz Kanata. You see Luke's lightsaber, which if you don't know, the last time we saw that was when Luke's hand got cut off, so that's pretty interesting. It's calling to her. She sees a vision of Obi-Wan and her parents leaving on a spaceship. That's the whole mystery, is we don't know who her parents are, which we'll get to in episode 9. And then we basically lead to the fight on Starkiller Base, where her and Kylo fight. It was a really sick fight in the snow, I have to admit. He gets scarred, and we meet Snoke. We don't know who Snoke is. He's just this big hologram. We don't know who he is or what he wants. And then she basically finally gets the piece, and she goes and sees Luke. And you see Luke sitting on the hill, and he looks majestic as shit. And that was a powerful way to end that movie. But I hate that Leia and Han... The one thing the sequels do that I hate is the OG3 never have a scene together. Like, Leia sees Luke, but Luke never sees Han, and Han never sees Luke. Like, there's never 3 again. Han dies in episode 7. But I hate that. I hate that they never had a scene together. It sucks so bad. Then we get the same year, because episode 8 takes place right after episode 7, where the First Order attacked the base. And this is basically their empire, where they're running the whole time from the First Order. And we see Luke, like, trying to train Rey. But Luke has, like, cut himself off. And a lot of people say this is mischaracterization, which I do obviously kind of agree a little bit, because in episode 6, I mean, Vader's the scariest person in the galaxy. He still sees the good in him. And he failed his nephew. But I think it's really human that Luke is so scared of making another empire by mistake. And, you know, he said, when he raised his lightsaber to Ben, because he saw all these visions, it was even just a split second, and the dark side was corrupting him, and he was so worried about that happening again, he had to cut it off, and that's why Ben hates him, obviously. But we see him come to terms with what he's supposed to do, and that's his whole character arc, which I never understood. Luke becomes Luke the Legend again at the end. He literally force projects his whole self in as a vision to Rey and saves Rey in the rebellion, right? And gives them time and basically lets the rebellion live on. And that's what Jedi's supposed to do. And he does it. And we get this great scene between Luke and Yoda, where Yoda comes back. He's basically talking to Luke, and it's old, funny puppet Yoda again, where he's just roasting the shit out of Luke. And he's basically like, failure is our greatest lesson, which it's true, you know. You have to fail to succeed. And so Luke realizes that, yeah, he failed, but now he can succeed. And I really like that plot point. Not much else happens in this film. We get the Rose horrible subplot of them going to like this like other planet. So stupid. I don't know. I don't really like this movie that much, guys. It was my least favorite before Rise of Skywalker came out, which we'll get to. So we'll get to right now, actually. 1 year later, The Rise of Skywalker, we see Rey training, which is nice because I always wanted to see Rey train with Leia. I wish we got more of that. This movie was like more fun than Last Jedi. My problem is the story. Like, there is some good scenes in this movie. We get like Han seeing Kylo again, and we see the Death Star wreckage fight, which I thought was pretty cool. But I just don't like a lot of the stuff they do. I hate that Palpatine's back, which is so funny because like the cameo bait did work for me, because if you watch my reaction trailer like 5 years ago, I was like, holy shit. Anyone, right? You hear Palpatine's voice again, you're like, holy fuck, that's Palpatine. Like, what the fuck? It's so like a shock that he's back. But then you just sit there and you're like, fuck, that doesn't make any sense, and I hate that, because Anakin's the chosen one. He was the one to kill Palpatine. And now you're talking about, so the prophecy was just for Palpatine to save, or for Anakin to save the galaxy for 30 years, and that's it, and then Palpatine's back. I never really liked that. I think they should have, that's what I was talking about earlier, where Disney didn't stick with their story, right? So you have episode 8, and if you don't remember, episode 9 had a script that was actually pretty nice, where the final battle was on Coruscant, all these people are rising up against the First Order, Kylo stays evil, which I think should have happened. I think Kylo should have stayed evil. But no, Kylo turns good, and basically Palpatine kills him, or he kills Rey, but then he transfers his life force into Rey and he dies. I don't really like the life force. I never liked force healing in general because Obi-Wan could have just healed fucking Qui-Gon in episode 1 and saved them, and there's a lot of, I don't know. Guys, stick with me here. The only thing I do like is when she is fighting back against Palpatine, all the voices of the Jedi are like powering her. And I don't think it was just executed well. I think we should have seen the Force ghosts around her with their hands up. Like, you know, because Luke, Mace Windu, Ahsoka, all of them just go like that. And I think we should have seen that because it's not really like told to you properly that they're like helping her and like power her through fighting Palpatine. I don't know. She basically kills Palpatine and the First Order blows the fuck up. And we basically, she goes to Tatooine, buries the lightsabers, which I don't really like that. It never really made sense that she buries Luke's lightsaber, which was Anakin's, at Tatooine. Tatooine, the same place where Luke lost his uncle and aunt, and where Anakin and his mom was enslaved, and where Anakin's mom died. Maybe not the best place, you know, maybe Yavin or somewhere else, but I don't know if you should do Tatooine. And basically we see the scene where everyone memes, where she says, "I am Rey Skywalker," which I don't think it's that big of a deal. Like, yeah, like, she wants to be a Skywalker. It just hurts that Palpatine technically won, right? He killed Ben. There's no Skywalkers left, right? And Palpatine basically won because Rey is a Palpatine. I think it would have been much more cool and badass for Rey to be like, I am a Palpatine. I'm Rey Palpatine, yeah. Like, that's who I am. But I'm not evil just because my last name's Palpatine. That would have been a nice dynamic because she's a great actress. I just think the writing wasn't too good for her. But, yeah, so that's the end of the sequel trilogy. And now we have a new Rey film in development, which I hope does get made because I do like Rey as a concept and like seeing where she could take the Jedi Order. I do love Daisy Ridley as an actress. It just really need a really good writer for this. And we could see her really struggling. You know, we can even see Luke come back as a Force ghost or something, like, you know, or even Yoda or something to help her. And she's struggling with bringing the Jedi Order back. We don't know when it's going to come out. We don't know when it takes place. But it'd be cool to see the galaxy post Episode 9 because we haven't yet. Episode 9 is the farthest in the timeline we've gone. So I really want to see how the galaxy is. I hope they don't do this other thing that they did after Episode 3 or after Episode 4 where like there's remnants of the Empire. I hope there's not remnants of the First Order. I hope the First Order and all the Stormtrooper look is just gone. So it's interesting to see. But yeah, that's the complete timeline of the movies, guys. I yapped for a fucking hour. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I don't know how long this video is going to be. It's going to be kind of long, but thank you guys so much for watching, as always. Let me know what you guys think down below. I might do one for Marvel as well, because I do have a Marvel encyclopedia. Give it a like, give it a subscribe if you guys liked. If not, totally okay. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.